there's a question of constitutional rights involved here.
The First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
There will be no demonstrations. Meeting will come to order.
Are you now, have you ever been a member of the
Peace Press?
Are you now, have you ever been a member of the
Peace Press?
Any real American would be proud to answer.
At Peace Press.
No, 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 no.
Yes.
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 Stand away from the stand.
I look at the Patriot Act as exactly that kind of a governmental structure. They've got folks out there who would be happy to throw lots of us in the slammer if they could, just by declaring us enemy combatants and take away every single right that we have simply for criticizing them.
Corporations and people in government who have vested interest in keeping things the way they are.
In fact, a more organized structure than there was back in the 60s for repressing.
To be able to counter that and to really get the information out.
Peace Press arose as a response to that kind of organized governmental repression.
We did stop the war in Vietnam. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again.
I wanted to remain socially committed in my life, and somehow that had begun to slip away.
President Kennedy was shot from ambush today.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot.
Senator Kennedy has been shot.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept another term as your president.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Peace Press was a very attractive option for me. It was something that helped me get back on my own compass.
You know, we really thought that we were going to be changing the world.
I think it's that time in history again, maybe. So.
I mean, remember that the peace movement was just part of a much larger movement in Los Angeles that included freaks of all sorts, that some of them were completely apolitical. So there's a huge body of people that were just anti-establishment.
I love Peace Press, and I came to this reunion because I really wanted to see people.
I got a job there as a cook, and I come to this place, and it's really great. There's always really cool people, really friendly.
Hi, my name is Ray Robinson, and I'm working at Peace Press. I just came out here from New Jersey, and Paul, I went to high school with Paul, and he told me that it was a job at Peace Press. And I said, let me try it out. And so I stayed there up until the company was closed down.
We've got people here from the very beginning when it started as the draft resistance and SDS, and Jerry Palmer, took some money and he bought an old A.B. Dick and put it together and ultimately started a print shop.
I'd rather be working at Peace Press than any of the other jobs I've had.
That was a relative short timer at Peace Press. I stayed on running small presses and had a great time.
The press was such an attractive force to people then and to people now. Noticed how many people showed up to our reunion.
Seeing all these people has been very heartwarming.
I worked at Peace Press a mere 8 years. The level of dedication and talent that everyone here had and brought to the press is just phenomenal, and it means so much to me.
Very friendly, very close-knit.
A community that 20 years later I get to see again in all our glory.
Bob Zaw was there. I think I was there the whole time.
Street Pulpit, I worked from 69 to 72 in camera work, and then shipping work and receiving the summers in between. I worked in the back of the shop, and I thought it was a great job for a while.
I'm Billy Spire, and I have no idea what I did there except did a whole lot of coke and rap books.
I started coming to the press as a customer, and I was editing a little newsletter that probably some of you remember from the Notice Center for Photographic Studies, and I thought it was the coolest place.
as just an experience of kind of living and working together, I think it was very positive.
I mean, I used to think that the 60s were just yesterday for many years, you know, like in the 80s, I got, it was just yesterday, the 60s, and all of a sudden I realized they're ancient history. When I got my master's degree, I was working as a physicist, got a job which I thought was going to be in space technology. But it turns out that the rockets were instrumented rockets to look at hydrogen and atom bomb explosions in Johnson Island. I didn't like the whole idea of war, so then I went back to school to get a PhD.
I had a 2S deferment that I felt bad about having, so I started hanging out with people, Chernigock, War Resistors League. I wasn't a draft dodger, nor was anybody I hung around with. Draft dodging, that's when you get in a car and drive to Canada. Then refusing induction is a 5-year offense.
Then there were the demonstrations around the Dow Chemical Corporation when they came to campus and recruiting at UCLA. That's what got me kicked out of UCLA.
I sought to be with the draft resistance backed by spiritual people. There was always a priest or a rabbi or a Protestant minister. Daniel Berrigan, I was arrested with him, and I was arrested, 20 times over the years.
I got a job at NCR, National Cash Register Corporation, in their research laboratory. And then I had all of a sudden $1,800 a month. I didn't want my money going off to buy napalm and bombs for Vietnam. I thought that the left needed I thought they needed a better way of getting their message across. I started the Peace Press back in the 60s because I wanted to use the printing press as a way of letting people know about Vietnam more than anything else. Vietnam was raging, and I thought that it would be nice, especially at UCLA where I was going to school, to have better printed quality material. But unfortunately, there were no postal instant presses or Kinkos or anything like that in those days. They were just commercial printers, and it was very expensive to get things printed. Not only that, the printers often didn't share our political point of view, like the stickers, you know, like Easter seals. Make love, not war, or war is good business, invest your son. And I sold them to be used on envelopes, so when you sent something off, you know, send a little message along with it.
I made this dove, and then I was running out of money, so I could only go to black and white for the last ones. These are people that actually send me money to do it. And that gave me enough money to actually buy the first bad printing press.
I think it was in Westwood, our first office on Broxton. I think it was a nice little complex of stuff. Those offices probably now rent for $2,000 a month, but back then I think it was maybe like $30 or $40 a month for a little office.
When the Vietnam War was going on, there were all kinds of agent provocateurs running loose, and moles in organization. Things were different, and it could be dangerous. The lawyers were afraid that the FBI had boom mics and were listening in. We'd have meetings out in the open on the beach in Venice where the issues would be discussed. Car tires began to be punctured. That was the police, and there's nothing you can do about it. We got some guys that chose to get a house together, and then we set up an office area to do draft counseling. They took in a woman. She had a police record and had been planted there, and tried to find out information about them. And she started dating some hitchhiker. He threatened to tell what she was really up to. So she came over with her boyfriend, who was the head of the SDS at El Camino, shot him right in the heart and murdered him in cold blood. These kids in the resistance who were just getting involved, they realized they could be murdered with no punishment for the killer. That's the political climate at the time that people were involved in, and it scared people.
Part of the FBI Contel program, which was set up to sow seeds of dissent.
You had a sense that they were always kind of checking up on you and knowing what you're up to. The landlord was approached by the FBI and just told them that we're a bunch of, commies there, and why do you want to rent to them? Or maybe the FBI said, well, we can also look up your taxes. God knows what the FBI can do.
We had the FBI, the CIA going through the trash at that location looking to see who Jerry Palmer was getting mail from. I was deciding to turn in my draft card So immediately I started going to resistance meetings, and then that led us into getting involved in this press so we could do our printing.
Resistance had a lot of people help, SDS and VDC were, students mainly, and they had to go to school too, so I just wanted to make it a little bit separate from SDS and VDC, but people from SDS and VDC would also come and run the mimeograph machine. We trained people, I trained people, and they trained their friends.
I got involved politically when I went to the Thanksgiving fast on Los Angeles Boulevard, Restaurant Row, and people stayed there for 3 days in the street, not eating. We sometimes printed our own stuff, and then I took them up to Westwood to hand them out to the movie lines. I think we went to 320 Wilshire. It was in the basement.
Yeah, that was in Santa Monica. We've been evicted from that one. I don't know exactly what happened.
If you went and tried to get an anti-war poster printed, even from a sympathetic printer, they were afraid. Because the next minute the LAPD and the fire department would arrive and say, well, gee, we discovered these 257 fire violations in your place, we're going to have to shut you down.
That actually happened to these springs. We were shut down by the fire department.
The fire department measured the clearance over the stairs, and it was a couple of inches less than it should be, so we were persona non grata there. That was a great place, too. That was right down in the Santa Monica Mall now.
The resistance was composed of people who were turning in their draft cards, signing complicity statements, refusing to take physical, refusing to take induction orders, and all that led one place, to an indictment, to court, and to prison. So it was kind of a dead-end group that was going to come to an end. December 4th, and I turned my draft card in, my best friend roommate turned his in, and we marched from this church downtown to the Federal Building. We had a giant collage. It was a giant blown-up draft card and a collage of photos of riots and so on. And then our draft cards were pasted to it. We took it to the Federal Building and tried to turn it into the government, and they refused to take it. Once the case started, if I started to talk about my beliefs or my moral reasons for not going through with the induction process, they would object, and some judges would sustain, and you could no longer say anything. You could defend yourself, but you couldn't actually say anything.
Actually, Richard was a draft resistor, and that's the same federal judge.
Right when we were all assembled to go marching, these process servers were passing out these things telling us we were going to all be arrested if we did it. So we did it, and they were right. We were all arrested. They arrested a lot of middle-class people, and they beat them up pretty badly. ACLU and everybody else got on the police, and the police had to completely withdraw. I mean, eventually we won in our case.
During this time, this is when the students were rioting on college campuses with the delusion that if they shut down the college campus, that somehow the war would end in Vietnam. That's what people really thought. And after a long period of students striking and taking over administration buildings, finally, Reagan shut down the university. Just one day he said, it's shut down. And people were just crying, because the rug had been pulled out from under the student movement. You want to close down this university? You think this is going to stop the war? Okay, it's shut down. Now what? A lot of the big demonstrations and that type of attitude that we could just shut down the university and end the war, it ended that very day.
It's on Venice Boulevard and Western in Los Angeles, and it was two garages tied together, and Jerry took me in there, and he had an old A.B. Dick. He had put together this kind of homemade camera equipment and all this stuff, and that was where many flyers and leaflets had been produced.
The SDS people felt that they were representing the masses, and we weren't. And they had a right to as much paper, as much ink as they wanted, and they didn't have to clean up after themselves. And if the door was locked on the garages on Western, they'd take a crowbar and break it off and break in and do their printing and they leave. It rankles me to this day.
Turned out a fellow named Jerry Palmer had been very active at UCLA and had been involved in demonstrations and had been involved with others in getting a print shop going during the period of 1967-68. He mentioned the fact that he had all this equipment in a garage over in Los Angeles that was just sitting idle because one of his colleagues during that period of time had been with the Resistance League, draft resistance, had to go to jail for a period of time. I've been on the campus scene and student activist for that period of time, and I was trying to figure out what next to do with myself in life, and went down and looked at the press. I volunteered at that point to essentially get those presses running again.
I come from a very left-wing political family. Had been essentially reared on Marxist teachings and anti-racism and pro-labor.
When I was in Boston, I sent a letter to the New England Free Press and said, "Dear Sir or Madam," was just inquiring whether I could come and learn how to print there. And they sent a letter back and said, "There are no sirs or madams here. We have nothing for you. Goodbye."
I grew up with a sense of responsibility for protesting things that I didn't think were correct. I graduated from high school during what they call the Summer of Love, 1967.
The Vietnam War was raging.
Of course, it was in the worst part of the Vietnam War.
Very interested in becoming politically involved because every guy I knew was having to deal with a draft, and it just seemed like I needed to do my part.
I was a young girl at college against the war in Vietnam.
I wanted to contribute something to the anti-war movement.
1968, I was at UCLA and active in SDS. In 1970, I went to summer school at Santa Monica College and took printing. Knew of the press as being a tiny little operation in a garage.
I moved out to LA because my boyfriend was in Vista and was working there.
This romantic SDS organizer from New York came, a national organizer came, and so I married him. I knew the politics in the room.
My mother worked at the Peace Press, and so based on the estimated times of when she worked there, I would have been about 6 months old to 3 years old during that time.
And so I was 18 years old and involved in a lot of things that were over my head. I went with him to a lot of it. The Peace Press was something that I did without him.
I still can't quite figure out how we heard of Zorba, John Register, but we took a drive out to Hollywood, and essentially he was almost a street person.
And I'll be honest, I was just a farm boy turned surfer. I was like 18 years old.
But he had some printing skills and had worked for the Free Press.
The Free Press distribution office. I was doing a couple of local artists' comic books, op art.
I stopped in at the Midnight Special bookstore and saw that there were a number of pamphlets and booklets printed at Peace Press. And then within a couple weeks I was there and being interviewed.
But I was in a women's group, and I think it might have been Kathy Rhodes who mentioned that she was going to be leaving the press and they needed someone else.
I said I would work for nothing if they would teach me how to print. And I was vitally interested in doing my part to stop the war.
I was perfectly willing to do it without getting paid because I did have another job waitressing.
I was going to school at UCLA and I was feeling like going to school wasn't relevant and wanted to do something else. I think someone just said they need help and I went.
Printing for different leftist groups I thought would be a little more meaningful in my life than serving muffins and coffee to people in a restaurant.
I came to LA to attend the People's College of Law, where I met one of my classmates, Bob Zaw, who, knowing that I was looking for work to help support my family while in school, asked me if I would fill in.
I went over there to check them out, and really great people, they needed help.
They were a little bit suspicious of me dropping out of the sky like that. I later heard, several years later, that several of them drove by my house to see if I was perhaps a federal agent of some sort.
The name Peace Press just kind of hit me. Well, I figured, well, that had something to do with printing, and that was my field at the time.
I jumped at the chance to earn a little extra money, having no idea what I was getting into, having never worked in a print shop before.
I had come actually from another printing collective I'd been part of in New York City. Actually, we were asked to be part of it and to try and help the folks collectivize more, because we were a very tight collective in New York.
But I've been politically active in a lot, on and off in my life, ever since I was a kid.
My parents were communists. I was a red diaper baby. My father, in fact, was one of the people who was named in the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings in Hollywood in 1947.
I was a very junior politico in my, I had kind of leftist leaning, had literary aspirations of some sort, but I was actually very interested in a printing collective.
The idea of a printing collective was something I wanted to find out more about.
Those things interested me as a good middle-class kid who cared about social justice, to contribute to a business that might create a place whereby people could do printing for people that needed it.
I was a printer and got laid off and was not working, and somehow came across the Peace Press.
I'm an artist, and I was making art, and my particular field is printmaking.
When I came out to LA, I applied for a lot of jobs and thought I was qualified, but I don't know if it was a woman breaking into the business.
I heard about the Peace Press because I was working at a political action organization called People's Lobby. And People's Lobby, the ex-used car salesman director of the place, bought a printing press. No one knew how to run it.
Said I was a playmaker and I was really good at it.
We needed metal plates occasionally. Could get them at Peace Press for like $5 a plate because they supported a clean environment, which is what we were working on.
I remember going in and interviewing with Bonnie. She was looking for a stripper. And I had a little bit of stripping experience.
I think someone just said they need help, and I went.
I liked the people at Peace Press. There was an opening and I got in.
I'll be quite honest, I went there because I was looking for a second part-time job while I was finishing my PhD at UCLA.
I just needed work after school.
I was like Jonathan, I needed some work.
So I just took this on a whim, thinking that, it would be maybe temporary, but it lasted 10 years.
I was referred by somebody that was working in the art department. She didn't give me an overview of anything. I had no idea.
There might be sort of an interesting connection between what was going on at UCLA academically and what was going on at Peace Press, and that intrigued me very much in terms of finding a place where people were able to find a balance, let's say, between their private and public lives.
We see evidences of somebody else having used up all the film, or what happened to the paper that I had set aside for this job, or there's no ink. And of course, sometimes you come back and see tons of material that's trash because somebody thought they knew how to print and it ended up wrecking 5,000 sheets of paper and 15 pieces of film and God knows what, for our poor budget.
I didn't know a damn thing about printing.
I had been an art director for a small publication prior to that, but I was never hands-on in the mechanical sense of the word until I went to Peace Press.
There was the generosity to say, well, okay, you don't know this, but we'll teach you how to do it.
Brad, my future husband at the time, taught me how to buy paper.
Bonnie and Bob were always willing to teach you.
Jerry essentially taught me everything I knew at that point.
Bob taught me a little bit how to estimate.
I never felt like I was ever really a highly skilled printer. I was adequate. I kind of pushed myself to do the job as best I could.
When we were there, we had the opportunity to do different things. If we wanted to learn something else, we had the latitude to do that.
Giving me responsibilities, giving me jobs to do that were maybe a little bit out of my league yet at the time, but letting me do it so that I could learn.
I learned all of the mechanical skills about graphic design at Peace Press.
I've been always
grateful for the Peace Press and my background training.
It was a very good learning experience.
I became a fairly competent printer and learned something about business, learned something about getting along with people.
There's lots of people there that knew everything that there was to know about it, so I got a very good education.
We could actually make a living by learning how to print, like the way it had been viewed before is like you have your job and then you rush down here at the end of the day and you donate some time to print for a political cause. Why don't we make this our job and learn how to do it right? Our real job will be printing for commercial customers, and then we can donate the labor to our political causes that we want to donate to.
Now this one I remember. So we must have done that. The bug we got in the 80s, right? What's that? International.
We had it before when I was there too.
Bug in the 60s.
Yeah.
Naturally, Peace Press workers were supportive of unions, and not being in a union actually affected us because some of our customers had to have a union bug, and as much as they wanted to print with us, they had to have a union bug. And so we were looking around, and then the unions were coming around. So the first thing would have been the IWW. We joined the IWW. We never heard from them again. We used their logo, and I remember we were printing a flyer. What I wish this had come true. It said 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And I'd love a 16-hour work week. So that's what they were striving for.
Oh, I don't know how many hours a day.
Keep it cranking and put the music on and print and print and print.
We all had to try to learn and do almost everything.
I also did deliveries, and after that stint, went into the plate making room and did the plates, and then a couple of years in the camera room, a year in stripping, and after that, went to the front office and did estimating and customer liaison.
Everybody just did everything. We all learned how to do, typesetting, paste up, a little bit of camera work and darkroom work, and working with the negatives and burning plates.
As our skill levels raised and the customer demands raised too, we were printing 4-color, whereas when we started we could print 1 color.
There were already some people at the press who really were overqualified in some respects. Peace Press always operated relying on people and not machines.
So everybody watched everything that happened and make sure we got it right.
Working with designers as a camera person, this was back when using a process camera could be somewhat creative in your techniques, and working with graphic designers and literally having to discuss the jobs, particularly as you got more into table stripping and things like that.
Whatever you're looking at here, this image, remember that it took work to make it. It might have taken one person, but it might have taken a whole workshop to do it. Images are produced by labor.
Being in a group of people where you were your own bosses and making your own decisions was an experience that's been very meaningful to me.
The only thing we printed that was not for ourselves was Women's Strike for Peace wanted to print up the draft regulations, which was a big, thick sheaf of papers.
I was busy being 19 years old, raising a baby by myself, and learning how to do printing.
I worked with Bob, we ran the business, I went off on maternity leave. I think Bob Sabor and I had the first baby there.
And I was pregnant at the press when Susie was pregnant with Sarah, and I remember we talk in the kitchen over ice cream and say, yeah, it's calcium, this is okay. And that was when I remember we had debates over should we be allowed to collect disability, because there were some women who said, wait a minute, a pregnant woman isn't disabled, that's a natural state. Well, yes, of course it was, but we wanted to collect the disability.
Back in the day, Dina and I were both fired from Los Angeles Valley College for teaching. We taught a poem that she'd written, and it was considered to be obscene. So our case went all the way to the California Supreme Court, and we were exonerated.
She did this whole series of poetry and the book in response to her own mastectomy.
When my late husband Peter passed away 3 years ago, when I would stand daily in the hospital outside of the intensive care unit and have the daily talk with his doctor, we stood right next to a poster that Peace Press printed for the Venice Family Art Walk, which I went to this year. And it was very comforting to me to stand next to that poster with these daily talks.
The relationships were very real and among the people, and the women were very close. We were also doing the beginning of women's consciousness raising groups around that time. I think really the most lasting effect was the support of my women colleagues at the Peace Press and those relationships which endured after that time.
There's a couple of unions in the graphic arts. One of them came around to the press and they walked around, and Anita was running the press, and she was a great press operator. In fact, she ran the Power of the People. She had either a broken arm or a broken leg. She had a body part in a cast, and she was running this 200-page book on a printing press. They weren't impressed. Women in the front, men in the back. That was their position.
Most of the women in the shop were working, doing the stripping and the camera work, and the guys were running the presses. Mostly ended up in the front office, though, because no one else was really doing it.
And I think part of the value of me being in the back of the shop and coming to the front of the shop was I knew how everything ran.
Made the Peace Press my political focus until Diablo Canyon.
I got involved with the anti-nuclear movement.
Taking nonviolence training to protest the nuclear power plants.
Went up to Diablo Canyon and got arrested and thrown in jail for a week.
So we did 6 days in jail, some of us.
You know, I went to jail there. People came to watch that event at Diablo Canyon in '78.
We did affinity groups and all that stuff.
And the next year they went to jail.
It didn't stop the construction of that plant. A couple of years back when I was driving up through Morro Bay, I noticed these weird sirens on the side of the road. If that plant ever goes down, those sirens go off and alert people to evacuate. So some good did come of our blockade.
I gave a lecture this week at UCLA about political posters. And one of the students says, well, you know, where are the women? And I said, there are way more men political poster makers than women. And it's always been that way, and that it shouldn't be that way. And of course, then there's a lot of anonymous, too. And that's stating anonymous was a woman, but in the case of political posters, anonymous isn't always a woman. You make posters against the government in South Africa or South Korea or El Salvador, you know, it means it's a death sentence, so there's a lot of reason for anonymity.
The Center for the Study of Political Graphics, they are the repository of the Peace Press data at this point. And they are the largest archive of that kind of political material for the States.
Now we're over 50,000 posters.
And I might add, 4 times larger an archive than that at the Library of Congress. Supporters of the Center for the Study of Political Graphics and individual collectors who saved work, really, is the reason why that material has been preserved.
It was really an incredible experience working on this exhibit and getting to know Bob Zaw himself and Irene Wall. Our exhibits in the past 16 years have gone to over 260 venues, you know, mainly in the United States, but increasingly abroad. The center was incorporated in 1988, and we got our nonprofit in 1989. And at that point, it was a P.O. box and posters under the bed, under my bed. And then...
Wait, you had 3,000 posters under your bed?
Well, they were under the bed and in the hall, in that one office. 2 volunteers, and then people said, an address is better than a P.O. box. That little room. 4 flat files. As you see now, there's a lot more flat files than 4. Every flat file in the building is ours. And we have them sorted by theme, by country, by collective.
It wasn't until I got to college that I was asked to do an internship through the Getty program at the Center for the Study of Political Graphics. I saw these posters from the Black Panthers, from the Chicano movement, anti-war posters.
People who come, who visit, They have to make an appointment because we're so small staff, and they all have to have gloves.
Most of these things were printed on not museum quality paper. They're not pH neutral. They're on high acid content paper. It's the kind of stuff, you know, that's designed to yellow as soon as the sun comes up and the paper gets thrown in your driveway. The oils in your fingers are actually acidic.
When you're wearing gloves, and this is especially for people who are not, you know, like the students and stuff who are not trained, it makes them realize that they have to be more careful. So the gloves also has a psychological effect to it.
One of my earliest memories is being at the Peace Press, looking up at a poster, a Black Power poster, that was a red field with a black fist on it, and just staring at it for a really long time. It's burned in my memory.
The Who Rules LA and how Los Angeles was ruled, and in one of those pamphlets is a story about Norris Polson, and he actually gave you a letter that showed he was offered the job of mayor of Los Angeles by Chandler of the Times. We printed for, I can't remember the name of the group, but We Merely Make Loans. It was a group that they bought a share of stock in Bank of America so that they could get all the paperwork and study to see what they were doing. So they did books on redlining and things like that where nobody had put this kind of information out before, where they showed that basically the banks take the money from all over town, but let's say they take it from the ghetto, and then they loan it out to people who live in Beverly Hills. That if you lived in this area of town, you didn't qualify.
At the same time that was burning down at Washington University, the anti-ROTC movement burned down two ROTC buildings.
We cut various deals with people who came to us. One, you know, sometimes we did our work for free but charged them for the paper or the production costs.
Yeah, I was working late one night and I got this call from a jail cell in Ventura, and it was Skyhorse or Mohawk. And they were being railroaded for murder, and they weren't being allowed to really communicate with hardly anybody at all, and they asked for help. So I explained this at the press the next day.
In this case, we decided we're springing for the paper, we're springing for the press time, we're going to all do this on our own time. They were set up for a murder that they didn't commit, and the person who set them up was an FBI informant. And when that became unraveled, this trial ended. These guys were never convicted.
This guy right here, Malaquias Montoya, he is like one of the most prolific Chicano silkscreen artists. He's been a really great inspiration to me.
And we printed all the stuff up at Peace Press.
There were sort of factions that were becoming more radical. There were people that were advocating even violent means of protesting. There was kind of a split in the movement at that time between people who were willing to participate in violent activities and people who believed in pacifist or non-violent activities.
There was a debate over the issue of the name of the press. Like we should change the name of the press from Peace Press to a more militant name.
This has got People's Printing Collective, and it's got Contempt on it. This one has Peace Press on it. Who is People's Printing Collective?
I think that was kind of a nickname that people used at Peace Press. You know, there was various factions at Peace Press. This says the same thing.
And after some very heated discussions and talking about the meaning of our work and what type of work we're doing, it was decided to keep the name of Peace Press.
Did a lot of experimenting. We did the lunch stuff, you know, and we started doing that on La Cienega. We'd have a hot plate and we'd kind of take turns cooking.
I think this is the first time we actually had like a sign that said Peace Press on it. So this is where I spent most of the time when I worked with the press, but it's a little different than when I was here because it was burnt down.
The place had been an air conditioning and heating place before it was a printing place.
We had been at La Cienega for 2 years, and we had a 3-year lease, and the landlord came to us and said, well, you got to be out on this date. And you know, it was January 8th. He wanted us out by January 9th, 1972. They put the wrong year in. So I pointed out to him that we have 1 year left on our lease. We're not leaving. We have a year left in our lease. There was no two ways about it. We were right, and he was wrong.
The fire department determined the fire started in one of the heaters. I don't think it was sabotage, but maybe somehow sabotage could have done that to it.
What a coincidence. We burned down the day that he wanted us out because he thought we had a 2-year lease.
They found a hot spot. It's actually in the stripping room, in that corner of the building where there was a heater. There were half a dozen heaters in there. Most of them were disabled.
It was arson. I was at my house Sunday the 9th, watching the Lakers win streak come to an end, the 33-game win streak against the Bucks. My doorbell rang, and it was you, I think, and Susie Safford. Your eyes were red and tears in your eyes, and you said that the press had been burned to the ground.
We felt homeless. I remember going to Jerry's house, to his parents' house, and meeting in their backyard and trying to discuss some of the options and what we should do. And
when the presses were all burned up, and you could see the presses, you could see how the heat goes up and it collects at the ceiling and comes down, and right on the sides of the presses, painted whatever color they were, there was a line like a water line, except it was a heat line.
We got in the cars and went down to Peace Press, not quite believing this had really happened.
And all the paint was burned off and the rollers were cooked off to a certain level, then below that was fairly intact.
We walked in, there was no ceiling, no roof, the press was melted, it would never run again.
And it got our camera, it got our paper cutter, our presses, so everything was ruined, and the insurance company paid us off, I think it was $17,000, $18,000. These things are all financed, so we were required to get insurance. Lucky thing, too.
The amazing thing is that we were out of business for one day, Monday. This happened Sunday. We didn't go to work Monday. We had some meetings, but within 48 hours, we were back in business in somebody else's business. Then people sent us money when they heard what happened. Jerry Palmer proceeded to rebuild everything that was possible to rebuild, including the solar. And so we were off and running, and we moved into Joe Schwartz's, he's a photographer and a printer, and we would print for him free, and then we would do our own work at night. And then we moved over to Ken Stone's on Venice Boulevard.
we were in someone else's space, and we always had to be, somewhat sensitive and cautious around him and not offensive to him. And we had to protect our customers from his dog, who would sometimes attack them as they came through the door.
He let us use his press, pay him some rent.
So there was a number of things to get used to.
Finally, we moved to the Willard Avenue location where he then shut down his business and he moved in with us. So we had his press to use once again. Well, this guy came by Peace Press one time. His name was Henry Willett, and we were on Willett Street, and he told us the history of the building. All the streets in the area, Ince, Willett, Hope, they're all named for people in the movie industry in the 1930s. This was where bookmaking was done.
The client coming through this front door would be greeted at that desk, except Thursday mornings we had our own business meeting. And people would be lined up at this door saying, what the hell is going on? Is this a business or what? These guys in this collective are out back there deciding what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, and we're waiting.
Lots of meetings to talk about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and probably the importance of different jobs.
Sometimes those meetings were very frustrating.
Almost like a comedy hour version of some sort of malice circle of speaking bitterness.
And the issues that would take the most time were seemingly the most insignificant.
I wasn't very good at getting along in meetings. I thought that I knew what to do and everybody else could have their meetings.
There were people that wanted to be told what to do and just do it. They didn't want to have to think and make decisions.
We had a little room in the back that we used to euphemistically call the sauna room because air didn't go in and out. It was where the printing inks and other kinds of materials were stored.
We had a steel door about 6 inches thick, and then brick walls 4 to 6 inches thick.
Multi-lift pressman and was standing there by the press. He was just in slow motion. He'd pick out and examine the sheet, look at it. I remembered that he and one of the other guys had come out of the sauna room just a little bit after lunch. And I went back there. Just to open the door was enough to get stunned. It led to a big discussion that we had at the press because nobody wanted to limit anybody else's freedom, but we were running a business. We had politically correct holidays. We didn't celebrate Columbus Day, the massacre of the Indians of the island of Hispaniola by Columbus. We didn't have religious holidays in the traditional framework because we didn't like the idea of what organizational religion had done to people. So we celebrated the autumnal and vernal equinoxes, the winter and summer solstices, Labor Day, of course. Everybody got their own birthday off.
The communal aspect obviously is something everyone at one time sitting down for lunch with a cook.
Everybody gathered together for lunch and you'd hear about their personal lives.
Most businesses don't have a kitchen like the Peace Press had a kitchen.
Peace Press would buy the ingredients for lunch and we were going to take turns cooking.
It became too expensive to take some of us off the printing presses to cook, mediocre meals.
And after eating some of the people's cooking, I said, I'll do it. I'll do it.
And then we ended up with really fabulous professional cooks. There were artists. Maud Simmons was then and is still cater for the television and movie industry. So we had fabulous lunches.
And we had a nice garden on the roof that we made ourselves where we could eat lunch and enjoy a little bit of peace and quiet.
Not as many print shops these days drink a couple of cases of beer and play touch football in the back alley anymore.
We ate together, worked together.
Our after-hours parties, I remember we had a couple of those at the Peace Press.
We took dance classes together.
We tried a lot of things at Peace Press. There was periods where we did morning meditation, tried that for a while. And we had study groups.
I remember that we all piled in cars and drove down to San Diego to hear Joan Baez do a concert.
Outings, aye.
Extremely unusual camping trip.
About every 6 months we gather out in, what was that one place, Sespe Park?
To Hot Springs on the way where we went skinny dipping. We did things like that in those days.
When it came time for everybody to go to bed, who was going to be sleeping with whom?
And people were always like hooking up with each other and then not, and holy cow.
We had herbal ceremonies in the press that would keep us nice and happy.
There were alternative substances involved. I remember one of our group standing on the table in the campground and expounding for hours.
The first night everybody was like physically very close around the campfire. We'd taken some drugs or LSD.
We also dropped acid.
Another member of the group, having been in the Vietnam War, having flashback experience of Vietnam, and he was very upset and got all scratched up, running through the brush.
The next day, people were like 200 yards apart. It wasn't anything bad that had gone on, but something snapped for a lot of people.
So after a day of being very close and together, we sort of dispersed for the second day because it was getting pretty intense. There were some very creative and intense people involved.
I've never had a job where I had the camaraderie except where I had it at Peace Press.
The camaraderie there isn't anything you would get anywhere else.
Friendships that we have maintained all these years. Our relationship, found him. That was the best thing that happened for me there.
It is the place where I met my husband, and I met him there as the kind of person that I wanted to be with, and I think that's really amazing.
I lived in a collective with several other people, and one or two of them worked at the press as well.
The people that I was working with there were also my primary relationships in my life.
It was a fun place to work. We had a great time.
For me, Peace Press was a working collective, and that was one of the finest and sort of the Achilles tendon of Peace Press.
I think we set a different set of priorities for what we wanted to get out of the business than other businesses did.
you don't have owners, you don't have managers and workers. You can't negotiate a contract with anybody because you're all the same.
All of the things at that time were really collectively done.
When you have a lot of immature people making decisions, like we all were, including myself, it can get really complicated.
I remember Zorba was there, and I tried to tell Zorba something that he didn't want to hear, and he threw a table at me.
Somehow there has to be some level of maturity so people can understand that they don't get their way.
It was the same kind of things that people had to face trying to form a socialist government in the larger sphere. Namely, how do you reward people's efforts, acknowledge their skills and what they bring to the situation? What about the people who don't produce? What about the people who are less committed to it and only partially committed, and who maybe don't work so hard at it?
There got to be a dichotomy between the people who were there for the political involvement and committed to the idea of a collective workplace, and people who actually knew printing skills and could do a good job producing a commercially viable product.
People that had work done with us are like-minded.
In addition to the causes we were dedicated to, we were dedicated also to a way of arriving at our decisions that also was ethical.
We used to have goals meetings, and maybe twice a year, where we would try and take the long view of what people wanted from their lives and from the press.
We also began the morning every day in the pre-press room where there was a big scheduling board. So we would have many, many jobs going through the shop at once. But I don't think the board did it very well. It was all in your head. And that was at times problematic.
It was always in chaos. The art department had this crazy rug and a cat, and the litter was everywhere, and it was sticking on stuff, and you'd come back, you'd get something back from the camera department, and it was like, what's that? Litter.
By the time I arrived, there was a board. I think it was a 5-person board. Before that time, there had just been general collective decision-making.
The structure of the board of directors, it's like, oh God, man, it's just a print shop. Let's print stuff.
Because the jobs we were doing were more complex, we needed to hire a higher skilled workforce.
People that ran the press, they just came in from all different walks of life.
The people that were hired weren't as interested in the collective part of it, in the fact of the shared decision making, and it being a worker-owned business. They pretty much wanted to do their job and get their money and go home.
In the fact that there was really not much of a hierarchy and a business structure, and it contributed to really a messy, sloppy business.
Which was much more democratic than any corporation could be.
On the other hand, it could make for wonderfully raw, emotional type of relationships with people.
My main role at the press was kind of the glue person who kind of just tried to hold things together and keep people working together in a fairly friendly fashion.
I think I have to give a lot of credit to people like Bob and Bonnie, who probably really sat down and thought about it and tried to deal with the people part of the workers at the press.
The mama and the papa figures there.
We would either, have to gang up on Bob over, who was running the press, and then we'd migrate over to Bonnie, who was stripping it.
I just really enjoyed working with Bonnie.
She really was an emotional center to the place.
And it made me want to stay there longer.
It's no coincidence my daughter is named Bonnie, and she's now 21. And because we were so enchanted with the essence of Bonnie Nettler.
There was a nominal board of directors, and then there was Bob Zoll.
We were fortunate in bringing in Mick Harrigan, who had some progressive politics, and he'd been at People's Lobby, which was similar to Peace Press.
Jerry was multi-talented.
My first encounters with Jerry was when he was the executive president of Peace Press. Yes. Jerry, what that meant was he didn't come in on a regular basis, but he was sort of the Peace Press crisis counselor.
Jerry, of course, as always, was full of ideas.
There was a wall And the wall had the electrical service in it for the whole press. And it used to scare the hell out of me even to walk near it. And the guy who came in and messed with it was our executive president, Jerry Palmer, because he wasn't frightened by that stuff.
You know, looking back, kind of jerry-rigged together, but kind of a mixture of high tech for the time and really no budget to pull off high tech.
And that really speaks, I think, to the way in which the amateurs, if you will, became professionals in the process of working at Peace Press.
And we printed a book for someone who was self-publishing a book called Sakato, which was about a little baby monkey at the Los Angeles Zoo.
I fell in love with this book. It's called Tony and the Magic Door, which was a children's book written by Howard Fast, self-published in the early 50s when he was blacklisted. Even though at that point in time he had written Freedom Road, he'd written Spartacus, which had been published in 30 or 40 languages. And he came in and sat down with us, had lunch with us, talked to us, gave us the book, ended up giving us 2 more books to publish after that, just because he liked what we were doing.
We were the alternative everything press. So we did solar energy, we did electric-driven cars, we did wind-generated energy, books that had to do with alternative health and alternative education, survival greenhouse, organic farming, all of those things that were out of the mainstream, but absolutely part of the cutting edge of a vision of what a more humane and earth-friendly life might be.
Our initial efforts were political in nature or trying to take an environmental stand. So it was an effort to have a political voice, I think.
We were all owners, and everybody could participate if they wanted to in decision making. I remember one time we were going to print Timothy Leary. It had to be printed on the sword. I was the only vote against printing the book for him because I didn't like some of the things he had done. But I said, I'm the only operator of the sword, and it has to be on a sword, so I'll do it. I could have vetoed it, actually, but it didn't.
We had a big controversy with Wet Magazine, who had an ad, and there's a naked woman in it.
The image derived from a 19th century painting, Luncheon on the Grass. And it is a central image in what was then, in the late 60s, the emerging feminist discourse about the women being posed as objects for the male eye.
Our press operator objected to it, Anita.
We took a look at it and we agreed that this was inappropriate content.
We supported her, and so we took the image out.
And we sent it back to the designer. The designer ultimately whited out the 2 nude figures,
which was probably a more effective ad than the one they planned.
And our head presswoman was okay with the printing of it. So it was an opportunity for us to engage in the discourse over what was ethical and appropriate advertising.
So we did it like everything else. We'd sit down, we'd have a meeting, and we would decide what to publish.
I think one of the pivotal jobs we had was Dave Fleming's marijuana book. And it was a bestseller book. I mean, how many did we print of those things? Thousands of them.
Somebody told me something like about 500,000. Maybe even more before it was all over, which showed everybody how to grow their own. And probably was the book that we printed the most of and sold the most copies of.
Stripping the books to me gave me the most amount of pride when it came out. It printed, it folded, it bound, and the folios lined up and the pages backed up, and we had this like virtual work of art there. And I still carry that through now. In my business, when we do a perfect bound book, it's like deja vu.
And I remember just them trying to shoot certain book covers in ways that now, of course, would be very simple, but they managed to do them. And they took major amounts of creativity and labor to do all of that.
The quality of the books that were produced. I mean, quality in terms of the artwork, the cover designs and so forth, the type designs.
It was really fun for me to be able to work on the book design for the publishing. I really enjoyed that. It was an uneven effort on my part, but the press supported me, my early efforts, and it was very rewarding for me. The Power of the People book was very, very important to me. That just the effort these people put into this work, and it just was good to be involved with them.
Until we realized we were going to do an exhibit about Peace Press, these things were being sorted in the places they would be most easily found if they were going to be used. In other words, by theme, right, by topic. I just realized that there's so many other places where these things are stored that I think there's going to have to be, I'm going to have to do some more pre-prep. I've seen that one. Put that in the photograph. Yeah, we have that. Oh.
Some kind of general workers union.
Yeah. Now this one has printed by Peace Press, but labor donated by the Red Star Rising Collective of Long Beach. They're in books already as an individual piece. For example, the Save Our Sister Day is already in a catalog. It's gorgeous. Yeah. Never saw that one.
No. Yeah, this is...
That's fabulous. Here's the other one that you were looking for. I don't think we need it. We have that one. Yeah. I think you gave it to me. I think you gave it and said that these are all Peace Press posters. I don't have any. Have no date for this one. Have no artist for this one. And these are the slides that we've taken so far, and they're on the website. The ones that have been digitized.
About 35 there, I think.
Some of these I'm going to want to take photographs of. That's fabulous.
We're getting all these notes thrown at us. I mean, musical notes. And we're saying in there somewhere is a symphony.
Right.
Yeah. We'd have a demonstration.
All right. These would be like on the street handouts.
It's interesting. Some opposite things.
Some opposite things meaning what?
Choosing what to go in the video here.
So let's make a distinction between those and leave those on there. Yeah, because this is really about the business, and this is about the show.
My role in the gallery exhibit is the art preparator, and I'm installing the show.
So I'm an artist, and artists have to do a lot of different things in order to make a living. So I got a job working in galleries. There's actually a lot of work. It's like we have to mount all these posters. We have to cut new boards. We got the spacing and then hang all this work. Henry's organized the work into categories.
And so when I looked at this work, I remember, in a sense, how clean the cupboard of our lives were at that time. And we were able to make decisions unhesitatingly because of it. This was an absolute joy for me, putting up this exhibition, because it reminded me of just how important the work was that we did and that we made a difference. Is to say to the young people of this college community and others that you have a work and that you can exercise it and you can make a difference, and you can bring about change. And this show is here as an example of what can be done when people decide to do something.
We started training people using the press, and I used it to agitate and organize and educate.
The three people that we have on the panel today have all used posters to do that very thing.
Now I would like to bring up Catacolas.
The Guerrilla Girls began in 1985, sneaking around New York in the dead of the night, putting up posters all over the place, talked about the incredibly low numbers of women artists and artists of color in the art world. We very quickly took the voice that we had established in the art world and branched out into other areas of politics.
I'm really hoping that more young people and more of our students decide that they also want to make a difference in their life and in their world. They realize that by their own social activism, they can make the world a better place.
I feel like they really capture kind of sense of organizing, of mobilizing. I get really inspired when I see the posters. I mean, I get like all like pumped up, you know?
People learn their trade. They learn the technology of their trade. They learn the aesthetics and design of their trade. But they don't address the morality of the trade.
I have my students do community service issues with nonprofit organizations. I see it in my students. I see them struggling with issues of communication, aesthetics, and their conscience.
It's truly an educational experience.
It's a very nice kind of a way to see a little slice of history from 20 years ago or so.
Some of our recent history in the United States of America and what it's meant to all of us.
All these groups from the 1960s and all the posters, that come out of the 60s.
Yeah, a lot of these posters are unbelievable. I still remember a few of them since, a lot of them were before my time, but there are a few around here that I noticed still.
And what I really like about it is the fact that it's art for the people, and it's popular, and it's something that anybody can understand and relate to.
So much is done on computers now that we forget, the mechanical efforts that went into some of these.
It should be revived as an art form, as an aesthetic form that really kind of sets itself apart.
It's a little bit unsettling to see how much of it is still very topical. We obviously have just started our work and need to pass it on to young people.
It's our responsibility to not only nurture that, but to ask them to participate.
And sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
We were relating to the Black Panther Party and also trying to stop the gangs from hurting each other in very far East LA.
Maybe it was coincidental that this war in Asia was against an Asian country, okay? And at the same time, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum in America. Our particular minority community, such as, in the terms of immigration laws or health care, things that we might be denied, discrimination in hiring and promotions and things like that. So legal issues and all of those things.
I've been for many years a director of the Center for the Study of Political Graphics, which is the primary donor to this exhibition. And some of these posters maybe I even owned at some time, so they're like recovering old friends. I'm astonished at the range, of course, I had no idea what Peace Press was, and evoking so many different causes, small and large.
These music posters, and I actually went to some of these concerts, so that's what kind of surprised me, because I didn't realize that they had a social purpose.
This is an example of the non-political ones, but it's actually still political. It's Save Gasoline, so it's still dealing with ecology.
During the gas strike, and I wanted to do a poster that would promote reading, since people couldn't get gas.
It was very successful. This was also for us a demonstration of just how sophisticated we've become as printers and our ability to put together and print a high quality color separation.
It's like walking down memory lane for me.
I'm looking over your shoulder at the Grateful Dead posters and the Birds posters, and it's sort of the songbook of my life. And flashbacks, just looking at sort of my, some really good years of my life are represented by some of these posters.
I've got an old Rod Stewart and Faces on silver paper.
Those were the rarest of the rare posters because
Put
they
it up
weren't
on my
really
wall.
distributed. They were for the promoters.
The art department was kind of the art department for Avalon Attractions and a couple of the big promoters, rock promoters in Southern California. The production was always last minute, incredibly deadline driven, and then personality driven, because you had artists and management and agents all clashing heads, and promoters with very strong personalities, and we were just little tools in the art department to see that their work got completed and out there. And so the projects were more laced with, rather than technical difficulty, were just personalities, and the screaming and the yelling and the calling the names and everything.
We printed for them from right through Pacific Presentations, then to whatever they turned into next. Pinnacle Presentations and Avalon Attractions. That was a real profitable job. We would go out of our way to make sure we got their stuff to the LA Times on Wednesday afternoon at 5 o'clock. We did $100,000 a year for Pacific Presentations and Avalon Attractions. We got to see every possible concert free.
I personally don't see printing being around for the next millennium.
There were no such things as PCs then.
Our art department consisted of an IBM Selectric, had the little ball, each ball had a different font on it.
Even the mimeograph machines we had then were terrible.
Bob Zabora, who ran the big Heidelberg sword.
That's the press that most of the posters were printed on.
And when we didn't have a job on the Heidelberg sword, he'd run the multilith.
A Solna. I worked on a Solna. That was a bigger press.
And what is different now is we live in an age of electronic communication.
I really spent so much of my life in academia, something I try to convey to them all the time, something about a craft and something about working with your hands, and something about the sheer time and the skill that's passed down from what used to be master and apprentice. Now they think simply of electronic things. No Photoshop, this wasn't where there was PageMaker and Illustrator.
That's the same thing that the establishment uses. It's the same thing that corporate media uses.
We can all do it now at home, and we can basically distribute stuff through other means. And the internet is one of them. Wireless communication to every man. It allows every single person to have a voice. You can set up a website, and if it's a hot one, the whole world is looking at your website. I think the internet is a real political force, the democratization of the world.
I just couldn't seem to be able to print a bumper sticker. It'd always stick.
Brian Wilson got out of bed and showed up and wanted a bumper sticker printed. That I remember pretty well because I greeted him when he came in the door.
6'5" Donald Sutherland walks into the Peace Press, and I look up at him and I go, hello, Mr. Sutherland. And I show him the job, and he looks at me and just shakes his head and says, "You're not expecting me to pay for this, are you?" I go,
We were actually being paid by the Women's Strike for Peace.
Yeah, we printed some.
But we felt really bad about it.
Oh, it was sad, but I guess you could read it.
And it wasn't like a commercial job. This was going to be used by lawyers and draft counselors specifically to counsel people about what the options were.
It was loose leaf booklet, sort of, I suppose.
Hand collated.
We learned, in spite of our shortcomings, how to do it, and I must say we did some jobs that were crappy, but the people were very happy to be able to give us the job because they liked the way the press worked.
That's a Jerry Palmer design poster.
We printed our wonderful Guernica poster, which was supposed to be the beginning of a series that never came a series of one.
I think Guernica was the first Luftwaffe strategic bombing, and they killed 10,000 people in one bombing raid during the Spanish Civil War. Everybody should remember that when Colin Powell went before the Security Council to tell them about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, he demanded that
tapestries.
Be covered up.
He didn't want the American people to be reminded.
This was in the lobby at the UN, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, this was a very shoestring operation. People sometimes would bring their paper just so they had it, you know. I mean, they would come with some paper in the trunk of their car.
Things were a little dicey financially.
We had no money and we had no credit.
We were getting a lot of calls and people ready to cut off our credit for paper and ink and all that kind of stuff.
And one of our paper companies came to us. We were already owed a couple $1,000s, which was big money for us at the time. And he said, I'm going to give you an open line of credit. And that really made it work for us because paper's your biggest expense in printing.
I was just always having to worry about how the money was going to be paid, and I worried a lot about that because my name was on all the damn things, all the accounts and everything.
People wanted to have a say in the business, yet they didn't want to sign on the dotted line if the business would have a problem. So I was always the one that signed on the dotted line.
I remember writing a lot of checks, but I didn't have any money.
We were overdrawn every single day. And when we got to the end of the term of the credit loan, Union Bank said, well, we just can't do this anymore.
We had lost the IBM MTS-TV. I think we eventually defaulted on the payments. If you can get the money to set up a business with enough capital, it gives you a chance to experiment, make a few mistakes, learn a little bit, but you're not going to shoot yourself in the foot to where you can't survive. And we never really had that capital backing that would have been nice. You know, the other thing we didn't have was business skills. I wasn't very good at dealing with customers and going after them for money that they owed us. I wasn't good at that at all. And I remember Irene came in and started looking at the books like a real bookkeeper. Somebody that could make sense of these checkbooks with check stubs not even filled out and things missing and God knows what.
This is the part of the ledger where we kept the accounts. And just looking through these, I see a lot that were written off as bad debts. So I had to make the suggestion that maybe we'd have to cut back on salaries and see if we can find ways to do things collectively.
So that's the kind of stuff that was eating away at me personally every day because I was signed on the line and I really didn't want to go bankrupt.
I think we certainly could have learned how to do business better. But in fact, Bob, you were the best bill collector I ever met. The figures that I had heard for debt accounts in the printing industry as a whole ran from 10 to 20%.
I think we were 1/3 of 1%.
Yeah, I think that you, in fact, had a personal and perverse pleasure that you took in collecting bills. If that isn't good business sense, I don't know what is.
I mean, Peace Press was getting big. It was getting big, and there were big problems that went with it.
How idealistic the first generation of people at the Peace Press were, how very devoted to our political ideals we were. We didn't work for any pay.
Most people at the press were kind of half volunteer and nobody had any money and unemployment, God knows where they got their money.
We lived on the encouragement of one another.
Where people couldn't just do it for free or couldn't do it for $60 a week when industry was paying a whole lot more than that.
You know, we're not getting paid very much.
When I came in, you got paid $159 a week for a 40-hour week. And if you'd been at the press for 6 months, it went to $189. And that was it. Those were the two pay scales.
Towards the end, it was a multi-tier. The pressmen demanded a higher wage.
Just absolutely no chance ever of getting a raise there.
How do you fit into what's going on in the outside world? How can you make change? And the issue that we all had to deal with, how do you pay for your rent?
How difficult it is to manage those two sides of your life, that it seemed to be always very separate about how you sort of make your money and survive.
Several people had just gotten married and wanted to raise a family, and they needed a paycheck.
Have a decent salary.
And had some security associated with it.
Well, I'd say my retirement account has certainly suffered that.
We were dedicated to exploiting ourselves for other ends.
Yes, sure, we're doing something that we think is a worthy cause.
We didn't have set hours per se. We worked until the work was done.
It didn't always end at 5 o'clock. I don't think there was a particular time. It just depends on when people want to go home.
How much are we expected to sacrifice our lives, our time,
We didn't pay attention to our own health and safety. We didn't even have the procedures in place.
We would miss what was going on right around us.
We had a guy who ran our cutter and who also made deliveries. And he was off doing deliveries, and somebody said, have you got time to run the cutter?
Greg Nelson taught me how to do cutting because I wasn't allowed to be a chicken.
If you were not experienced and stopped it at exactly the right moment, the blade was actually bare. This thing goes through a stack of 1,000 sheets of paper like it was butter. I happened to just lift my hand up. I didn't feel a thing until I saw blood all over the cutter bed.
We were working so hard and we were focused so much on what we were doing and the obligations that we felt we had to our clients.
So we were concerned on behalf of everybody else in the universe except for ourselves.
Towards the end of 1971, my friends formed a political collective that made the decision to move to Huntington Park and to do workplace organizing for socialist revolution and the importance of organizing within the working class. I cherished that time at the press, and it was very meaningful, and it was a tough decision. It was like a fork in the road.
I don't think I felt like I really wanted to be at a press that wanted to do commercial work. I really just wanted to do movement stuff, and I did think that there were other ways to do that and to continue to be politically active.
I mean, you could think of many businesses that have partners and they eventually dissolve because the partners can't get along together, you know. It's just a tough thing.
Some people were just slacking off and it really bothered me. And I didn't know how to handle it. And I just blew up and left.
It would be better if I just left because there was always friction between me and other people.
I left the first time because I got disenchanted with, the political movement. I just couldn't agree with everything. The way it was being run.
I was having conflicts with some of the people that were there. And I was actually trying to clean up my own act somewhat, and I felt like the inefficiencies of Peace Press combined with my own inefficiencies were not making me the best I could be.
I met my husband there, we got married, we had house payments to make. When I left to make more money.
And I found what I thought was a better job that lasted less than a year.
But because of the experience I had at the press, I was able to get another job running a printing press. But it was not really a pleasant place to work.
The first place I went to work, I left because the guy was printing Nazi literature.
I left the press when I did because I found myself needing to support a child on my own.
I wanted to be with my baby, and so I left the press when she was born.
My wife, Susie Safford, who I met at Peace Press, really wanted to leave LA. She's from New England.
When Tony and I had a daughter, Sarah, we really felt that we didn't want to stay in LA, so we moved back east.
Part of it was financial. So I had 2 kids, and we had just bought a house.
2 of my friends who were also involved in the anti-war movement had decided to go to nursing school. So I decided to go to nursing school as well. And I've had a very full, rich career, 30-year career as a nurse.
I got a full-time offer at Los Angeles Valley College. It probably paid 6 times, 8 times as much as I was making at Peace Press at the time.
I moved away from Los Angeles, life to be, took a position in Tucson.
I finished my PhD and I got a job at the University of Arizona. That's the long and short of it.
The first time I left, 75, it really wasn't planned. And I got married, and we went to Hawaii for our honeymoon. I fell in love with the place. But I had to come back in 2 years because the company went bankrupt.
I came back to the press because that job didn't transform itself into a tenure track position immediately. It took a while.
We'd have some very stalwart people, and then they would just want to leave.
People that were still hanging on decided they had enough.
I was burned out.
People would get burnt out and have to leave. for one reason or the other.
It just happened over and over and over again. And when Bonnie moved, that really was kind of the straw for me. So to be at the press and see people I was very close to and worked with take their lives somewhere else.
It was always sad.
Sad. So we just decided let's try and sell the business.
I still don't to this day really understand what quite was happening or supposed to be happening, but there was another company that was purchasing, and you know, it just wasn't going to be what I had labored towards.
At the very end, that walk that Bob and I had on Willard Street was also pretty memorable, and Bob couldn't handle it.
Because it didn't exist anymore. Period.
I was always proud of the people and the dreams and ideals. That was the best part of it all.
Being involved with the press, there's almost nothing I do that I'm not acting without those same kind of beliefs and philosophy.
As business manager for a small weekly newspaper, we institute Thursday staff meetings, which paralleled the Thursday staff meetings we had at Peace Press.
We both work for a small newspaper, and I feel that we've had a strong influence on how some things that newspaper work.
With individuals as individuals and not people with specific job descriptions.
Our start at our business was based on Peace Press.
I learned enough there to know that this was going to be a satisfying career for me.
Even just the smell of the Peace Press, which I remember, which was described as chemical, that kind of grungy, sort of roll up your sleeves, we're making things, we're making books, we're making posters, had a huge impact on me. And I think it's a lot of the reason that I seek out being an artist.
99% of my jobs since then have been with nonprofit organizations or social change organizations.
The professional relationships with other women. That's what I took away from it more than anything else.
I've chosen a career very clearly, and so is my husband, where it isn't about the amount of money you can make. I mean, who's crazy enough to be, in art history?
One thing I learned at Peace Press was that it was useful for me to be willing to share what little knowledge I had. When I became an instructor of printing at Heidelberg, that was really my job, was to share the knowledge, not just of the equipment, but also problem solving.
With the confidence that the press gave me and the ability to work my hands, it helped me at being a working class industrial worker.
I printed for a few years for different places, and eventually I got into many different all aspects of building, plumbing, electrical, built houses.
It was my knowledge of printing and just typography and graphic design. Largely what I learned at the press have given me a lot of skills in setting up my own business.
For 16 years, our own printing business, I'd have to say that most of our work ethics and the way we've inspired our employees have come out of the roots of Peace Press.
I can give my children, who are now 8 and 13, about working in ethics and having some attempt at making a seamless correspondence between the various spheres of your life.
I still have a little Peace Press sticker on my wall.
What Peace Press accomplished was tremendous. I think that when that stone was cast in the pond, and those ripples are still going.
We started printing for a lot of political groups around town.
One of the more enjoyable parts about the press was just dealing with the customers who came in.
We no longer have a full list, but at one time in the early 70s, I had a list of 300 political groups that we printed for.
Political causes and socially conscious and community groups.
The anti-Vietnam War movement primarily. But I believe that issues of ethics and morality were at the core of the things that the people at the press believed in.
We were always printing for any trial that came up. The Black Panther Party, a lot for Angela Davis Defense Committee. When Daniel Ellsberg went to trial, we printed for the Pentagon Papers Defense Committee.
For the resistance, I know we were printing for. It was a kind of an open deal. I mean, we would print for somebody, or they'd come in and print for themselves because we tried to teach everybody how to run the press.
Would walk them through the steps and help them produce what they needed. I mean, to the point that in some cases people would literally call and say, I need a poster, I need a flyer, and we'd do the whole thing for them.
Everybody came through the doors of Peace Press that was doing political work, and it was very exciting. So we had an eclectic group of people, very political.
I think the press did a whole lot in the Los Angeles movement to print good quality stuff. I mean, as good as anybody.
Word came in from many different areas as a result of the connections and the community that grew around those organizations.
Organizations from all over the city would feel very comfortable to come in and either work with us or so in that way the creativity was there, and the printing was definitely solid enough to get the body of the content out to the people.
We were, I felt, a conduit and a service organization that provided technical and artistic expertise for this wide and broad group of people.
Well, we printed for the October League. We printed for Berrigan, No Nukes. We did a lot of concert posters.
I think we were very helpful in many, many ways to a lot of people. And the fact that we were willing to work with people who would often walk in the door without knowing really what they wanted or certainly how to put it together.
So I actually think that we had a very good reputation.
Which is true. But some of us, Bonnie, Tracy Okita, myself, and maybe one other person, we went out to Trade Tech and we took a class in business management. So everybody's introducing themselves, and we explained to them that we were like a worker-owned collective. The teacher just laughed his head off. He goes, well, most partnerships last 6 months, and usually most businesses, small businesses, end within a year. He looked at us and he says, I give you guys 6 months. And we lasted 20 years, and we all got A's. And then we proved them all wrong.
When I left the press, I realized that it was probably going to be the best job I ever had.
I really wish that the Peace Press was still around. I really do.
It's really important to have some kind of avenue to be able to get out the real information about what's going on.
A publishing company is worthwhile if you feel that you're giving a voice to things that wouldn't perhaps find a voice otherwise.
And what they do and say can actually bring about change.
Hopefully serve as a way to organize people to continue to make those changes and make sure that the changes we made don't get lost.
What's the old saying, that power of the press is the one who owns one?
Historically, there's always going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I think we made 3 steps forward.
We as a group of people were dedicated to serving other people.
I just haven't seen a generation of people like that since.
It was just very impressive to see how this group of people were able to continue and to maintain their integrity.
We had given back something socially that makes your life feel worth living.
We didn't change the world, but we made a lot of influence in it.
We felt vital.
It was part of a path. There's kind of a thread that runs through them all.
Every guerrilla movement begins to show that no matter how powerful the big guy is, the little guy can't always get under their skin.
Being in the press was just part of a continuum that hopefully I will continue forever.
The more I hear about the WTO, I feel like getting radical again.
I think I'd like to come back and do this again.
I think it's that time in history again.
I just think it's great that it's being documented. I think we are part of history.
There's a question of constitutional rights involved here.
The First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.